All right, we are live. This is being recorded. A week after Rara Thomas got arrested? Was it Friday or Saturday?
I think it may have been early Saturday morning, actually, but like 3:20 in the morning last Saturday. I think I could be wrong.
I think you're right. So, Rara Thomas is now off the team. That was announced Monday or Tuesday, whenever that or was it whatever day was it Wednesday?
It was Kirby's press conference this week, right? Officially, it was announced.
Right. Yeah. So it gets announced he's off the team. But prior to that, there's a lot of talk about comparing Georgia now to 2008 Florida and Urban Meyer. There's a lot of attention on Georgia and the players getting arrested. And a lot of the outcry is, Kirby doesn't have control. All he cares about is winning. This is the 28th arrest. Yeah, but here's a larger point. I think the traffic violations are one thing, and obviously beating on a woman is another thing than a traffic violation. One's a misdemeanor and one's a felony. So I think people equating the two are very stupid. And also the people who are crying out and saying that there's a culture problem at Georgia and all that Kirby cares about is winning. We all know that the people on social media, they would, if it was happening at their school and Kirby was doing what they were doing at their school, they would get defensive as well and say there wasn't. The only reason why they're doing this is so they can, because their football team, whoever they pull for, they went to the school from, they can't beat Georgia on the football field, and their best chance is to have some moral victory over Georgia. But also it's media members too that are doing it. Brent McMurphy. There was a guy on Saturday Down South that said all that Georgia does, they need to get a handle, or this is going to go way out of chaos. People are jumping up and down because there's some moral problem with Georgia. I have a lot of things on this. I'll let you go ahead because I could talk about this a lot. So go ahead.
Well, I know it was officially announced at Kirby's press conference, but I think we all knew that it was coming. Two things that make this different than reckless driving, speeding, whatever, right? One, as you said it. You can't have domestic violence and family. I forgot what the charge.
Oh, it was endangerment of a child.
Child endangerment. You can't do that and still be on the football team. A. B. Especially if you had 2 infractions, while you've been on the team. Right. So it's no big surprise there. I don't necessarily worry about what other fan bases and other media members are saying. I do think there's a culture problem with the cars and the driving, but I don't think that means there's an overarching culture thing. I think Kirby has a pretty good handle on the program, and by and large, most of the kids over there are good kids. And let's face it, we're dealing with we're dealing with professional sports here, and it's also football. You're probably not going to get a whole lot of choir boys playing football. That's in no way excusing what happened to Rara. But when people do stuff like that, they're gone from the team. So, but I will tell you, there's another report that came out and said the graduation rate for like the major programs.
That's been debunked though.
They said it was 40% is the
right
I saw, which shocked me that it was that low. So I think people are, because Georgia is now the premier program. They are on top, especially now that Saban's retired. I think a lot of it is jealousy, and I think it's important for the fan base. I don't give a shit. I wish Rara the best. I hope he gets all that stuff cleaned out. But my real question is, who takes over his spot at the position? I'm assuming it's Dylan Bell. And I don't feel –
I think it might be Landon Humphreys in that slot position.
Well, I don't – I'm more interested in getting through camp to see who does that. But luckily, as we talked about, the wide receiver room is pretty deep. So, yeah, it would be nice to have Ra there. I think he's a good football player and could have contributed, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a drop off. In other words, I think Carson Beck still has plenty of weapons to throw to in that wide receiver room.
Well, yeah. Well, so the the graduation thing, that report is from 2016.
Okay.
So let's take that. That's Kirby Smart's first year. A lot of guys left the program early because Mark Richt left. A lot of them transferred out, the ones that, stuck around. And then a lot of the guys that could graduated early from that 2016-2017 season. So that number is a little skewed. Also, Georgia doesn't. The University of Georgia doesn't go off on that.
What do you mean they don't go
That
off?
mathematical problem that they have. Georgia doesn't think that's fair. And look, whenever you get guys that are, leaving for the draft, 3 years and not getting their diploma till later on down.
Plus, you have NIL now,
and you have NIL, and then also that number is also skewed, and it's going to get even more screwy whenever it catches up to recent years. Guys that went to your university and then left the university, that counts against you.
Sure.
So that it doesn't make so in the era of transfer portal, it doesn't matter. But also, look, I think it annoys me that people jump up and down and media members because then it becomes a narrative and then people talk about it. And it's not true. It's not a real narrative because if Georgia had culture problems, you would see it on the football field.
I agree with that.
And you haven't seen it. But yeah, it's a talking point. And then here's the thing with talking points. People say it enough, people start believing it. There's a lot of examples of that. I just dealt with it very recently today. But people start saying things and other people start buying into it, i.e., parents of recruits who go, well, Georgia's got problems over there. Why would I send my kid over with Kirby Smart for the next 3-4 years of his life? Why would I trust him?
Because he's putting them in the NFL. That's why.
Well, that would be the argument. But again, those people have the parents are having that question raised potentially. But again, if you keep talking about it, it's going to keep happening. But today, did you see about the Kentucky thing?
No, I don't have any idea.
This is crazy with Kentucky. So the NCAA placed Kentucky on probation and vacated wins after 11 players received payment for jobs they did not perform. That was the 2021 season when Kentucky was in the top 10. Yeah, exactly. That is way worse than whatever's going on at Georgia. But people aren't jumping up and down declaring that Mark Stoops is a win at all cost type coach. That's way bigger infraction than going on the wrong way on a one-way street in Athens as an 18-year-old kid. But let's start jumping up and down about morality. Kentucky players are getting paid for jobs they didn't even do. That's like what spot jobs or whatever the hell they're called.
I don't know if it's we might be having some technical difficulties. You're freezing. I don't know if that's on my end or yours.
I'm not. I guess I'm not freezing.
What did you say the last part? You said that's like what?
It's like the mafia.
The way I don't worry so much. I think the Georgia fan base, by and large, you're right. If you had a culture problem, you'd see it in the dumb penalties that we've seen from Alabama the last 2 years under Nick Saban. Quite honestly, jumping off sides, hitting out of bounds, not holding up when you're pressuring the quarterback, stupid things like that. Number one. Number two, the way you stop that narrative is get the season started and start kicking people's ass on the football field, and then that all goes away. I'm not getting all up in arms on what people are tweeting on and FaceTiming or Facebook or any of the other social media bullshit. The media, nobody listens to what they say anyway. Most of those people in the media have never played football. That's certainly not. Some have, but not at a high level, collegiate level. We haven't either. So I don't know. I don't think there's a culture problem. I think it's pretty clear who the top dog, pun intended, is at the University of Georgia. And Kirby Smart is going to give you the benefit of the doubt on stuff that's, it's being reckless teenagers. But when you start beating on people and you do it multiple times, yeah, you got to go, man. We just can't have that here. So
yeah.
I'm not worried about the culture issue. I think there's an issue with the kids having too much money and buying fast cars and thinking it's a macho thing. But outside of that, it's not like Florida. You mentioned Florida. It's not like that. It's not like Miami. I just don't see that going on at that program. I don't see the tight end that got killed and he was doing drive-by shootings.
Aaron Hernandez.
Aaron Hernandez. I don't see that kind of stuff happening.
He did a lot more than drive-by shootings, but that's not what's going on, and I think we would know about that, and that would be a problem. So
agreed.
And look, Miami had culture problems because everyone's pointing to Miami being the new University of Georgia. Miami had culture problems in the late 90s, early 2000s, and guess what? Look what happened to them then.
What?
Well, they started losing, and they got a death penalty, and it was all downhill from there, and they haven't recovered since. So
they don't take knees now against Georgia Tech either, evidently.
Yeah, well, that's true too. Well, they have an idiot coach. Speaking of idiot coaches, let's talk about fall camp starting. Yesterday they had their first real practice, but it wasn't a real practice. It was the Olympics. So I think you and I talked about this because it was in Kirby's press conference, and I guess we'll talk about Kirby's press conference and fall camp starting. In his press conference, he said it was asked a question about camp and what would happen. Do they, I don't even know what really was the question. Like ease up during camp?
I think it was like resting players or load management or something along.
Yeah, I think it was load management was the word they used. So, which is a valid question. Whenever you think about Georgia, they got 17 games potentially to win the championship. So it's probably wise to maybe take, figure out when you can take breaks and when you can give players rest. Kirby, though, and the most Kirby Smart answer of all time, said the camp is the camp. In the NFL, they don't do that either. The camp is the camp. So, and me and you talked a little bit off air. Why don't you go ahead and give us your thoughts on it?
Well, I think it's going to be really interesting to see because we're entering the unknown, right? We're extending the season, playing more games. We got a 12-team playoff. I would argue, even though Kirby would disagree with me, I would say the conference championships don't mean as much as they once did. I think Georgia's got a gauntlet of a schedule, and I think Kirby is, even though he's stubborn, as we know. I think if he sees that he's going to have to adapt to that, if it costs him, he'll adapt to it. But as of right now, toughness, physicality, those are all the mission statements of the University of Georgia. And Kirby is not planning on doing anything any differently this year than he did last year. And he says with the schedule they're facing, the other thing he said is it doesn't lend itself to, doing load management or whatever the term is. So I think we're going to have the exact same type of camp that we've always had, and it's going to be physical and it's going to be tough. And I've heard some commentators that were, had the viewing period for the limited amount of time say that Kirby is very much like trying to get the pace going, like moving the pace of the practices. I think Kirby, this is my thought, and I could be reading a lot into it, but I think Kirby thinks that this team could be really special, and I think he's trying to push them and drive them. But it's going to be really interesting to see how, last year the injuries towards Lad McCompton.
Well, yeah.
I mean, we had a lot of people coming out that were not 100%, and it dragged on all season long. So if it was doing it last year, it's going to be real interesting to see how that plays out. But Kirby ain't changing a thing from what he said.
No. Well, here's the thing about the injuries things. It comes and goes. I mean, there's been years where like 21 and 22, Georgia didn't have a whole lot of injuries. And faced, they would have like maybe one or two guys that went down, key guys, but there's, someone to step up who was, played pretty well in their spot. So I think it comes in waves. But here's more of what my thinking is with this. I think the schedule sets up well for Georgia to do what they're doing in camp because you got 2 byes now, and you don't have that 1 bye before you play Florida in October. So you don't play 6 games, then finally get a bye. Georgia only plays 3 games, 2 big boy teams, and then Tennessee Tech is the next one in that 3-game set before they even when they get a bye. So I'm positive that Kirby probably saw that, knows that, and knows that he can push the team. And by the time they get to the 3rd week, they got a bye and they play Alabama. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's one of his talking points is if you go hard in camp, you got 3 games, we get a bye, get rested, and then we go play Alabama, which is, I think, we talked about it last week. I think all the players have that circled up, and I think they're going to be ready to go for that. And so if you don't have season-ending injuries in one of those 3 games, knock on wood, Georgia should be A-okay.
And if you win your conference, I don't know if I'm right about this, but if you win your conference or you're a top seed, don't you get a bye in the playoffs as well? So you could get 3 if you make it to the playoffs. You could, not all the playoffs teams are going to get byes, but you could have a bye again, so you could actually have 3 byes during the week. Is that right?
Yes, essentially, yeah. So if Georgia gets one of the 4 spots and wins you have to win your conference championship, and to do that, they would get a bye. So yeah, they would have 3 byes.
Well, and I know that I'm contradicting myself by saying, and I still even with getting a bye, I still don't see the conference championship being as meaningful. I think they're being watered down to some extent, but that could be an extra incentive to say, hey, we're actually going to have 3 byes throughout the year, so we're not going to have to worry about load management. But if that strategy doesn't work out and you don't get a bye, we'll see what happens. But that could also end up biting you in the butt.
Well, that's kind of what the byes could mean nothing. It could be a bad thing because teams have played really. I think you only get like 2 weeks off for the first round, and then you play, and then the next week you're playing. Those teams are probably going to be in a groove.
Yeah, that's true.
It could be a problem, but who knows? This is all new. Next thing about fall camp, and I think me and you both agree on this topic. Offensively, I don't think there's a whole lot to really worry about. I think really it's the competition for the number 2 spot for the quarterback. Who's going to play out wide receiver rotation? Really, I don't think there's any problems with the offensive line or tied in right now. I think it's going to probably be Delp and Lawson Lucky and Riddell. And then offensive line, you got who's Ratledge, Truss, Fairchild, Ernest Green, and then probably who's the center?
We got number 56. That's bad.
Wow, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, it is pretty bad. But he's played pretty well when he's been in there.
Wilson. Jared Wilson.
Jarrett Wilson, okay.
Right?
I think so. No, it's number 56, right? That's running me crazy now. Should know.
This is bad. This is our credibility's on the line here.
I know. I'm 50.
Yeah. 55. Yeah.
55, okay.
Yeah, we're right. I was about to call him Bo Hewley, but that's not right. So I don't think it's really offensive line that needs to be, or any of the offensive positions that need to be figured out. I think we're all going to be watching on what the defensive line does.
Yes.
And here's the thing: the defensive line outside of Jordan Hall being hurt, defensive line should have all of its depth, and so we're going to see what it looks like. And really, I think the key is listening to what Kirby says in every press conference about the defensive line and how they do. To me, what do you think?
I think everything you just said. I think the offense is deep. I think the offensive line should be a strength. You got 4 out of 5 returners. You got a quarterback that processes quickly, that's accurate, has a good arm, knows this offense. You got wide receivers that are, they're not going to be household names necessarily, but they're all really good, very competent. And then the running back room, Kirby says, I think he said it's one of the deepest ones we've had in a while.
Right.
Each one of those running backs, they kind of have a different skill set. They're all different. So it'll be up to Bobo to use them the right way. But I do think, I've said it, I believe this offense could be the best offense that Georgia's had in a long time. So full stop. That's what I believe is the potential. Having said that, I think the defense, the biggest bugaboo that Georgia faced, they I don't know where they were on run defense last year, but they fell way down, and they were giving up too many. They weren't being gashed, but the teams were able to run effectively, which opened up the entire offense for the opposing team. I'm worried about the defensive line. We don't have any. It doesn't seem to me, going into the season, we don't have the Jalen Carters, the Jordan Davis, Trayvon Walker. We don't have those guys. Right. We've got solid guys. I mean, they're good, but I don't think they're game wreckers. So to me, the defensive line is the weakest position group. Linebackers, I think Georgia's really solid, both inside and outside. And I think the defensive backs, I have no doubt that Kirby and that staff, with the players they have, will be able to have a pretty good secondary. So if we can get pressure, this is going to be really interesting. Will Kirby and Schumann change up how they play defense a little bit more? Meaning, the thing about how Kirby's played, and they don't really put a lot of emphasis on pressuring the quarterback, right? Sacks.
Right.
That it's affecting the quarterback is what Kirby always says, and I agree. But teams that could beat Georgia were usually dynamic quarterbacks that could run, right? And teams that could execute on sustained drives. If you were going to beat Georgia and score on them, you better be able to sustain drives. And they were really good, on historically always good on third down. So I'm wondering if Kirby's going to gamble a little bit more and give him Michael Williams and some of the edge rushers and linebackers, if he's going to try to dial it up a little bit more to get some turnovers, to give the offense a chance to be a little bit more defense, to be a little bit more opportunistic. I'm just wondering, and I don't think we'll have to watch throughout the year, but I could potentially see Georgia taking a few more chances on defense to try to get the ball back than they have in the past. We'll see if I'm right.
Yeah, well, I mean, we will see. And I think the first game we'll know most of these answers against Clemson. So I'm not really that worried about it. I think Georgia's defensive line will be fine. It's serviceable, which, I mean, I guess it's not going to be Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter defensive line of 2021, 2022. But it should be decent. And really, to me, is outside contained. Last year, Georgia was getting crushed on outside runs. If that can improve, and I think it had a lot to do with defensive ends, and I think it had a lot to do with our inside linebackers being slow. Shout out Jalen Dumas-Johnson. So, I think if that can improve, I think Georgia's defense will be A-okay. And evidently, my favorite player, Dalen Everett, evidently is supposed to be setting the world on fire in practice. So, if defensive backs, I think they're going to be improved. I think they're going to be better. If the defensive line's any good, they can hold outside container, I think Georgia's going to be fine. It's really about depth.
It is about depth, and I think they'll be solid on defense. I don't know how good they're going to be. I don't think they're going to be the 21, 22 teams, right? On defense.
It's kind of hard to do.
But this offense has a chance. I'm not going to ever make a comparison to LSU under Burrow, but it has a chance to be one of those dynamic offenses that can put up 40-plus points on average throughout the season. I believe that could very well be the case.
And that should be the expectation, given all the weapons and the quarterback that you have. So we'll see. All right. Well, I think that will be it. If there's any more breaking news, I don't think hopefully there won't be any. I know Georgia has another practice tomorrow, so hopefully there's not any injuries, knock on wood, wherever you're at. So we'll probably come again with another episode. There was a fly that flew across my face. But anyway, we'll come back with a conference championship breakdown and a playoff prediction, and then anything else that happens with Georgia during fall camp. We'll keep you updated. Check us out on Terminus Sports ATL on Twitter, on Instagram, and on TikTok. We're getting big on TikTok and Twitter, so keep giving us a follow there. Remember to like and subscribe on these comments, or these videos, not comments, but leave a comment as well. Keep subscribing. I appreciate everyone subscribing. We're almost there. We're not quite there yet. Whenever we get close to 100, I'm going to start really pushing everybody. So just hit the subscribe button. You don't even have to put it on notifications. Just subscribe. It helps us out. And then our presenting sponsor, Unishippers, take it away.
Yeah, we work with small to medium-sized businesses on all things shipping, whether it's small pack with FedEx and UPS, or with your less than truckload for pallets and skids and things of that nature. We work with over 75 different carriers, and so we help companies reduce their shipping costs and make their lives a little bit easier. So feel free to reach out to Marcus Gore at Unishippers Atlanta.
All right. Outside of that, remember to subscribe and enjoy the weekend. See you on the other side.
See ya.